So I would like to call to order the South Burlington City Council meeting of August 3rd, 2020. And I would note, while on the agenda, it does explain this, but we're going to try to utilize a slightly different process that some other committees have used, so that the only people that you see on the screen are the council members. And then if you are a public member wishing to speak, if you turn your camera on, I will know that, and then I will be able to identify your interest in speaking and call on you. And then if you're just a call-in, you'll just have to, and no video, you'll just have to, you know, speak out and, or send a, oh, you can't send a text. Speak out, interrupt, if you will, and say that you'd like to say something. And then maybe it'll be easier for me to identify council members. But you need to sort of put your hand up a little high. Like David, for example, since his name covers his face, if he just puts his hand up near his nose, I never can see it.
Right.
So he needs to either move his screen or hold his hand up high, just as an example, David. Okay, so welcome everyone.
I couldn't move my screen though. I haven't done that in a while.
Item number
This conference will now be recorded.
Item number 2 is the agenda review. Are there additions, deletions, or changes in order of the agenda items?
Yes, Helen, if I may, I'd like to have Chief Burke's presentation rescheduled to your next meeting, which at this point is the 17th, but something I want to talk to you about as far as scheduling is concerned, but until the next council meeting due to a death in his family.
Okay. Well, we're very sorry to hear that and certainly understand, and hope that on the 17th we can get that update. I think that's important. Are there any other additions or changes? Okay, we'll move on to announcements and the city manager's report. Does anyone have any announcements? None? Okay, well, I know Megan and I both have worked in the city clerk's office, opening envelopes and helping the city clerk get ready for the primary election day on the 11th. And I did post on the Front Porch Forum this afternoon. I don't know if it's up there yet, but I will announce it to the public now. Because of COVID-19 and the anticipation and reality, actually, of an enormous number of mail-in votes, the Secretary of State Office of Elections has given the towns and cities in the state the permission to open ballots and cast the ballots ahead of time. We'll be doing that, those sent in, obviously, on Wednesday, August 5th, and Thursday, August 6th. The ballots will be bagged and secured until Election Day in the same process that we use on Election Day, and great pains will be taken to ensure confidentiality. No results or preliminary results will be released to the public, and everyone working that day you know, is asked to really uphold that confidentiality. This is an opportunity for us to open so many ballots, insert them in the machine so that on election night, we will be able to report an accurate count in a timely way, as people are used to hearing. And I think this will be a good experiment, if you will, or practice for the general election in November. But that is going on, and we'll be doing that at City Hall in the small council room, meeting room, and the large meeting room. I don't have anything else, although we all took a wonderful tour of the library, that was, and New City Hall, so that was great tonight. Sorry you couldn't be there, David. It's spectacular. So
Excellent.
you'll get there. You'll get there.
As soon as they get a vaccine,
Right,
maybe they'll be offered in the new city hall. That'll speed it up.
right. Any other announcements? Okay, Kevin, do you have?
Yeah, Helen, I think we skipped over comments from the public.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did.
I would defer to them.
Okay, so comments from the public of items not on the agenda, and Leslie Black Plumo would like to speak, and then followed by Sandy Dooley. Okay, Leslie, you got to put your mic on. There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you
I'm
so
sorry.
much. No problem. I'm Leslie Black Plumo. I work at Vermont Housing Finance Agency. I'm also on the South Burlington Affordable Housing Committee, and I am a 20-year resident of the Southeast Quadrant. Spending an awful lot of time here now that I'm working remotely. But I did want to suggest that at the next meeting that you all include on your agenda reviewing the report that I sent to you last week, because there's been some really important work done by a housing space working group, an informal working group of city residents and property owners. And I think it's so important that you should defer decisions about taking any land off the table for housing until you get a chance to review it and be briefed on it. Because I think you'll be struck by how few parcels are left for housing, how many parcels have already been conserved, and that the impact on affordable housing is just too important to, to not hear more about. So I thank you for letting me speak out of turn, and hope to see you at a future city council meeting where we can formally review the report for you.
Okay, thank you. Sandy Dooley. Sandy, I'm not hearing you. No?
Sandy, this is Paul. Can I recommend maybe you log out and then log back in? And Helen, if that would be okay, that maybe she
That's fine.
is able to join when she goes out and then back in.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a comment on an item not on the agenda? Okay, well, Sandy, when you get back on and we can hear you, we'll go back to that comment and questions from the public. I apologize for skipping over that. So now we'll go to item 4 and the city manager's report.
Thanks, Helen. Very pleased to let you know and let the public know that virtually our entire team is back to work today. Of course, all of our essential employees have been working throughout the pandemic and all of the governor's executive order requirements. Now the so-called non-essential employees, who I think are still very important employees, are back, and we're happy to have them back. We will be accommodating team members who have significant challenges in returning childcare and those sorts of things, but for the most part, everybody's back. Also, to the public who's listening out there, our public works team is turning their attention to some of the deferred maintenance on our roads. I've gotten a number of calls about Spear Street and a section there coming down the hill toward the interstate or going away from the interstate, and that's high on the priority list for the Department of Public Works. They'll be there this week, beginning that work, and we're getting calls from people about grass being high or line of sight being blocked by high grass, and our team is anxious to get out there and get after those things, but we just need a little more patience, and we'll try to catch up. On Thursday, Congressman Welch is sponsoring or hosting with VLCT a town meeting for elected officials and city government. I sent you the information on that and encourage you to log in if you want to participate in that program with Congressman Welch. I also am very pleased to let you know that our the Chittenden Employers Health Clinic is up and running, and this is the clinic that we've set up with VSAC and with Twincraft, and we expect that another business will be coming in soon to share that capacity. But things are going very, very well over there. Also, the steering committee of the community outreach program is talking with Howard Center and other interested parties about potentially expanding that program county-wide. As you know, Burlington has their own program, which is they're able to do and focus on pretty much their downtown area, but the suburban communities have a little bit of a different challenge, and that changes again when you get to the outer ring communities. But certainly under discussion right now is extending this out to the outer ring communities. Of course, that will mean more resource will be needed instead of just the 5 counselors, but we're really talking about how to fund that right now. And then lastly, you have your meeting on the next meeting on the 17th of August, which just happens to be Bennington Battle Day and is a state holiday. So whether or not you want to keep it then or move it to the next night, totally up to you. But I do need to lock that in soon, as we'll have to do the warnings for it. So that's my report.
Okay. Is the council okay with moving it to Tuesday, the 18th?
Yes.
Well, let's let me think here for a sec. My preference is Monday because my Monday class ends at, we in August or September here?
August.
August.
Oh, right, Bennington Battle, I'm good. It's a week later, 2 weeks later that the fun starts. Right.
All right.
So is the 18th okay for everyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. I noticed that Sandy Dooley is back with us. Why don't you try your sound this time, Sandy? Welcome.
Okay, can you hear me?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, it worked.
My question was somewhat related to Leslie's, and that was, I see you have an agenda item on executive session at which you'll discuss real estate. If that discussion should result in an attempt to take action, would that happen tonight or at a subsequent meeting?
It would not happen tonight.
Okay, so it would be a warned agenda item if that should happen?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Something that would be on the agenda like on Friday.
Yes,
Okay, great, thank you.
you're
That's
welcome.
all.
Okay. Anybody else from the public? Okay. The consent agenda, we have 3 items: the disbursements, approving a grant application for the design of the stormwater treatment practices at Grandview Drive, and a 3rd item accepting Cider Mill 1, Pond 1 stormwater system and easements. I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. Is there any discussion or questions? No? All right. Why don't if you're ready for the vote, I will call the roll. Tim Barrett,
Aye.
Tom Chittenden,
Aye.
Dave Coffin,
Aye.
Megan Emery,
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, so we have approved the consent agenda 5-0. As we noted earlier, unfortunately, item 6, the overview of current issues related to policy operations and our budget at the police department has been put off due to a death in the family. We certainly send our condolences to Chief Burke and his family and hope that we will be able to have that presentation on the 17th. So we'll move on to item 7, which is a presentation and council discussion about the history and current plans for the east-west connecting roads in South Burlington. And Paul Connor will be sharing his maps and information and thoughts about that.
Hi, folks. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak with you about this. And what I thought I'd do is I was just run through, I was asked to give a little bit of a history of the east-west roads, planning for them, what the role of the official map is, and where things stand today. And so that's what I'll do. I'm going to use a series of maps here. What you're going to see in a moment there's going to be some aerial photos that show conditions at various times in history. You're going to see comprehensive plan maps, a few of them sprinkled through, and then you're going to see the official map itself. And we'll talk a little bit about their different roles. As soon as I remember how to advance slides here. There we go. All right, so just sort of taking a quick stab back in history, and I promise I won't spend too much time in the 19th century here, but this is a famous Beers Atlas showing that was published in 1869, just after South Burlington and Burlington became separate municipalities. And just zooming in, all the rest of the slides here are going to be focused on the southeastern part of the city, because that's really, when we talk about east-west roads, that's what we're seeing. So just to orient you, these areas that are highlighted in yellow, those are the major roads that still exist today. This is from the 1869 map. Going from left to right, you see Spear Street, Dorset Street, and then Heinsberg Road. On the far left-hand side, you see Swift Street that goes all the way over to Dorset Street. And you see Allen Road going up to where there's now the traffic signal at Spear Street. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you see Cheese Factory Road coming across. And then finally, in the middle on the right-hand side is Van Sicklen Road. I've seen this map a bunch of times, but it always surprises me to see how much of our current network is the network from 150 years ago. All right, so jump in. We're going to fast forward 70 years, just like that. And it's largely the same. This is the first complete set of aerial photos that we have for the city. And you see the same roads in the same position. It appears as though one of them disappeared, which is Old Cross Road. Must have been a pretty small road, but it doesn't really show up in this aerial photo anymore. In a second here, I'm going to speak about the different tools in the toolbox. And I thought this would be a good point to talk about the two major planning tools that we have. First one is the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan, the city first adopted one in the early 1960s, and I will show you a map from then. And the plan under current state law says that you must have a transportation element that plans out where you're anticipating future roadways to be. The plan is exactly that. It's a plan, it's a vision, it's a, pardon the pun, a roadmap to the future, and has a lot of different purposes, but ultimately it's not a regulatory document except in certain Act 250 proceedings. It's the guidebook from which you design how you might want to shape your regulations, how you might want to apply for state and federal funds and or support state and federal level projects, and of course make local investments. The official map is a tool that's much closer to zoning. It's sort of halfway in between a plan and zoning. It's a specific section in state statute, and I bolded a few key sections in here. Basically, it gives the authority for a municipality to adopt, as similar to a zoning regulation, a plan for municipal infrastructure, whether that's roads, parks, future sewer system, etc., land that would be needed for public purposes. The way it works is that the official map is adopted, as I said, similar to a zoning regulation, and in doing so, land development must be consistent with that, with the provision as shown in the official map. If somebody chooses to proceed with their land development without attention to the official map, then it triggers 120 days for the city council to institute proceedings to acquire land or interest in that land. And if the council either does not take up action within the 120 days or declines the opportunity to acquire it, then it goes back to being reviewed as though it was not on the official map. So it's a significant tool. It's been used in the city since 1992, and we'll speak in a few minutes. I'll show you some maps of how it's been used. Feel free, if councilors have any questions during this, to raise your hand. Tom.
Tom has a question.
So on the point you just made, I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. The official map, if anything, is an option for the city. It's not a mandate. So if there's a road on the official map and developers come in, the city still has to take action to acquire that land. And we have the legal right to do so if it is on the official map.
I guess I would describe it a little bit differently, Tom, to say that in the development review proceeding, it's the expectation and obligation of a developer to propose plans that are consistent with it. And as you see in the middle paragraph here, there is no takings associated with it. I would say 19 times out of 20, that's exactly what happens. It's land development usually requires the need for a new road. This assures that the roadway is connecting A to B. There are times when either a developer does not want to do it, or perhaps it's something that is less directly related to their individual project, like a sewage treatment facility, a water tower, fire station, something like that. And then you're right. It's in that instance, they would be temporarily denied. It's an option for council. There is no obligation on council to acquire it. I've described it in the past as sort of a right of first refusal. It's not technically that. That's why I'm a planner, not a lawyer. But so I can throw around words like that. It doesn't mean the same thing as when an attorney says it. But yes, it's an option at that point.
Can I follow up with a question about when you say it's an option to acquire? Does that mean if there's on the official map, if there's a road, I mean, right now on the official map, there's a Swift Street goes all the way through to Heinsberg Road. Right. Of course, it hasn't yet, but it's on the map. And if a developer owned the property where that road potentially goes through and chooses to develop it, I don't quite understand what our option to acquire the land, why we'd even need to do that.
Right. Well, so it's a two-step process. So the first step is, let's say a developer comes in for that property. The requirements under the official map are that that developer build and connect the road. That they dedicate the land to the city, and then through other parts, I should say, that they dedicate the land to the city for that roadway connection, and then elsewhere in the regulations it says that they must build it. If for whatever reason they are electing not to, and they submit an application that just ignores that entirely, then the DRB's responsibility is to temporarily deny that project, and then that kicks over to you all, where you have 120 days to decide whether you're going to acquire interest in or acquire that land as the official map had had called for. And if you choose not to, then the developer gets to go back to the DRB essentially and proceed as though that road had never been on the official map to begin with. So it's
Would
not.
they- Go ahead.
So it's
sorry.
not initially an option. It's an option if the developer has elected not to abide by the official map.
Would that also mean if the city chose not to acquire it, that the developer wouldn't have to build it?
Likely, well, under the official map part of it, yes. The DRB would still have the authority and responsibility under the rest of the regulations that talk about connectivity, where, between parcels, et cetera, but certainly that would be taken into consideration in any review like that. It wouldn't necessarily eliminate the obligation to connect to any adjacent properties, but it would likely weigh in on a specific circumstance.
Okay.
That makes
Tim, you
sense?
had, I think so,
this-
yeah.
Can you
Tim
hear me
and
okay?
then Tom.
So this happened with us at City Center with that one road along the stormwater with Cider Braverman, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's been 2 instances where this is triggered with the city council in my time here. One was last year with the roadway that would have been north-south immediately behind Healthy Living, where there was a planned roadway connecting over to San Remo, and the applicant for the stormwater facility there elected not to. They submitted an application to us to build something that wasn't a road. Council reviewed it and determined that it was not a likely roadway to exist. The other time that it happened was about 10 or 11 years ago. The little neighborhood that is off John Fay Road, which is on Heinsberg Road, just north of the interstate. The determination had been made that it was the access road there, John Fay Road, was conflicting with the necessary distance to an on-ramp for exit 12B. And so the applicant had proceeded, the DRB denied it. There was a little more complexity in that one because there were court elements to it as well, but eventually the council was given the opportunity to initiate proceedings and decided not to at that time for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, do you still have a question?
Yeah, and I don't want to belabor this, but this is definitely, I think, relevant to the overall discussion tonight. And I just want to ask one clarifying remark. So imagine, I've heard voices, and they've spoken at council meetings to remove some of these roads from the official map. My question to you, Paul, is if these roads are removed from the official map, then what fewer options and what more cost does that propose to the city should in the future a developer choose to develop that land and there needs to be a public roadway in there? What benefits are there to keeping that option on the official map, not necessarily to exercise it, but what are the risks and what does the city lose by removing some of these roadways from the official map?
Tom, can I hold the answer to that question until the end of the presentation? Because I think it'll showing a little bit of history will help suss that question out a little bit.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you.
So that's the super brief primer on the official map itself. So back to our fun with maps here. This is 1962 aerial, very, very similar to the previous one in 1942. This here is the second comprehensive plan that the city had in 1969. You'll see here that this one showed, along with the one from 1960, some planned roadways. You'll see that they were largely east-west, so going from north to south here, that's Swift Street Extension. That is a connection that is in part Nolan Farm Road, but also going all the way down to Shelburne Road and all the way over to Van Sicklen Road. You see Allen Road extension, and one thing that I sort of picked this map because I thought it was especially quirky was there was a proposed Route 7 alternate that would have been essentially a highway interchange going all the way along the Muddy Brook. That only survived for 3 years in the plan, so that disappeared shortly after then. So this is 1972. You see that that roadway is now gone on the one that would have been along the Muddy Brook. The differences here are that largely it's the same east-west roads, although in this case, and for a little while afterwards, you see Swift Street extension is proposed to go all the way over to the town of Heinsberg, as is the connection from Allen Road all the way over there. So this is again 1972. I jumped forward so that I didn't have to so that you didn't have to sit through every plan here, but this is 1985. Looks very similar to the 1972 one. Dorset, you see the Dorset Heights Road has now been built in this circumstance, but basically it looks very similar. 1991 comprehensive plan. So this was immediately after the first of a couple of Southeast Quadrant studies had been done. There was a big Southeast Quadrant committee that had worked from 1988 to 1990. And you see the Village of Dorset Park is now in here as a built road. And you see some new ideas that have been generated, including a north-south road that sort of weaves between Allen Road and up to where essentially the golf course is now. And then on the east side of Dorset Street, the same thing, a north-south connector. The direct connection across Allen Road has now been sort of divided into two and includes a connector through what is now Autumn Hill Road. 1996, similar but some adjustments. The section north of Nolan Farm Road has disappeared, but largely it's the same. The Butler Farms neighborhood now exists in this case, and there was an idea to connect Old Cross Road over to the Butler Farms neighborhood in there. Jump forward, and we're in 1999. So in this case, this is an aerial photo. The purple now is physical roads that now exist. So Nolan Farm Road has been built. Midland Avenue was built in that intervening time, and you see a couple of sections of what later became Park Road and Golf Course Road. If you remember from the last map, there was an idea of a road connecting through there, so this was starting to be built. The first official map of the cities was adopted in 1992. I was not able to track it down. I believe that there's a copy in the clerk's office, but per Councilor Reilly's notes earlier in the meeting, they're very busy at the moment, so I took the option to not bug them about this week. But this is the second one that I could find. This was in the year 2000, and I highlighted again in purple the planned roads, in yellow the ones existing at that time. So you see Golf Course Road has been built, and the purple ones are again fairly similar to prior ones. One new one's been added, which would have connected the end of Vale Drive over to Dorset Street. The other things on that map, by the way, are trails and paths. That's why I didn't highlight them. This is the 2004 official map. And so there were a few little changes. You see that roadway that was going to connect the end of Vale Drive over to Dorset Street has switched. It's now proposed to go up to Swift Street. There's the connection going east-west between Dorset Street and Heinsberg Road has been moved off Autumn Hill Road to go through what is now the Cider Mill neighborhood. And that would meet up with a connection from Old Cross Road. For the most part, and I'll pause here for a second, for the most part, the current official map is the 2004 official map. The comprehensive plan has been updated since then, but the official map has not, other than some minor changes and in City Center. It's on the Planning Commission's to-do list to update this, but this is essentially the current official map. 2013, again, moving forward to existing conditions, you'll see that a portion of South Village and Allen Road East has been constructed, as well as the road Cider Mill Drive. Jumping forward a little bit further, this is the comprehensive plan from 2016. So this is the latest policy document of the cities, and it matches, relatively closely to what had been in there. You'll see that it has a few plan sections connecting from South Village up to Nolan Farm Road, the connection through from Cider Mill 2 going eastwards, the connection up between the end of Vale Drive and Swiss Street, and then in purple, dashed purple, this was a little change that showed keeping the right-of-way from Old Cross Road as a possible future one, but it says in the plan that this is reserved for future use rather than an actually planned road. As of the time of the adoption of this plan in 2016, the areas in orange represent sections that were approved for development but not yet built. So you see, this is where the approval, which took place in 2005, of the Midland Avenue to South Village was approved. Cider Mill 2 connecting over to Heinsberg Road was first approved, I think, in 2008. And then you see the little section going north in South Village. That's South Village Phase 2. This is essentially the current the current conditions taken last year. The purple in here are sections that had been built since the last aerial photo that I showed you, but you see that that's the connection between South Village and Village Dorset Park. This also, I think, helps to show why there's sort of road stubs at the end of the South Point neighborhood, because that was the plan to connect north-south from South Village all the way up eventually to Nolan Farm Road. Of course, the city has since bought that property. It is a planned rec path at this point.
What is the little purple way up north?
That's there's a little section of the official map that had indicated that the Oak Creek Village neighborhood was to connect over to what is now the Rye neighborhood, and that would eventually connect to the Swiss Street extension. So that's why when you look at the Rye neighborhood, one, it's got a connection into Fox Run Lane, and then two, on the very northern boundary of that neighborhood, there's a roadway that looks like it's intended to extend westward, and that's that exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I think I'm almost done here, and then we can go to some questions here. Just sharing with you, so this is again the 2019 aerial photo. The orange in here shows road connections that have been approved, but not yet built. So you see this is Cider Mill 2. Again, this was approved way back in 2008 and then reapproved a couple of years ago. It's not been built, but it is approved. And then in the top left-hand corner is the Spear Meadows neighborhood, which is approved at the local level. It is under appeal at the Act 250, but it was approved at the local level.
Okay.
I think I've got two more slides here and then I'm done. There's a lot of text in here, and I'm happy to share this presentation afterwards. But if you just focus on the bold, this is from the 2016 comprehensive plan. It speaks about a lack of east-west connections. It talks about how there had been planning previously for wide roads, like what you would imagine or what we can all see Nolan Farm Road being, and a shift in the last 20 years or so, or 25 years, to having connections instead of cut-throughs. So the example that I think is a really good example of this is how Allen Road East weaves through South Village Phase 1 today versus how Midland Avenue was designed as a wide road with no homes facing onto it. That was the past. Design was to create roadways where there were no homes fronting on them at all, and that would be Swiss Street Extension was built that way. Midland Avenue was built that way. Nolan Farm, not entirely, but largely built that way, versus some newer neighborhoods like South Village Phase 1 or the new Cider Mill Phase 2 that has more of a focus on these streets also having homes on them and being slower speed streets. And then, of course, just lastly here, 2016 comprehensive plan talks about having the complete streets mandate for the city to plan for all users, to connect roadways together, which is critically important to have not cut-throughs, but connections so that you don't wind up with having to have 4-lane roads everywhere. Being mindful of natural resources and the context. And then lastly, this was an addition, I believe, at the very end of the process that the Planning Commission and the Council wanted to do, Strategy 37, which was to update the South Burlington East-West roads analysis. That was a study done somewhere in the neighborhood of almost 20 years ago now that was examining the traffic impacts of the planned connections at that time. Again, you don't have to go through all the summary findings in here, but essentially they each served a different role. Swift Street extension would be the busiest amongst them. And then 2007, we did a Dorset Street corridor study that really focused on design of connections to how there could be connections that are done that are not cut-throughs. And then lastly, just a couple of weeks ago, you got a presentation on the implications of the Tilly Drive study, which included in it an evaluation of Swift Street extension and a finding that I think was pretty significant in there, that Swift Street extension principally facilitates east-west through streets. It does provide enhanced emergency vehicle accessibility. It increases volume on Tilly Drive a little bit, but its most significant impact and something to really consider is that it reduces volumes on Kennedy Drive, which was, of course, designed to be a road to take a lot of volume. So that's my presentation. I'm going to go back to a normal view here, but that's the entire history of the Southeast Quadrant's road network in 15 minutes.
Okay, well, that was good. Hey, Michael, Mittag, you weren't here when we started the meeting, but we're asking the public not to have their video camera on unless they wish to make a comment. So we don't have a gazillion little pieces. If you want to make a comment, then you turn it on. But before I take comments from the public, I would like to get any questions or comments from, thank you, Michael, from the council. Tom?
You said the 2001 East-West Road Study. What is the shelf life of these studies? And I almost sensed in your statement that it might be time to refresh it. Is 20 years a long time?
I think that probably, well, so the reasons to refresh a study would be A, it's different connections, which very well could be the case. B, it's different circumstances and amounts of development. And C would be a different approach to transportation planning. I would say that probably the 2001 study is pretty out of date at this point. The 2007 Dorset Street study, I was surprised. It didn't look quite as thoroughly at level of service, but I was surprised at how current it still remained, because I think it was published right at a time when nobody saw 2008 coming. And so it assumed that Cider Mill 2 would be built, that South Village phases 1, 2, and 3 would all be built in the next handful of years, that the golf course would finish building out. I wouldn't say, it's 13 years old. It's not brand new, but it's not as old as 13 years, because immediately after it was published, the market dropped out for a while. We have also learned collectively a lot more about how people move and preferences in the community, and so it may be worthwhile looking at some of that. The good news is that the Tilly Drive study did at least look at Swift Street pretty in detail, so that would be a good jumping off point.
Okay. Other
Um,
questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just to answer Tom's other question from earlier,
Oh,
if
I'm
I
sorry.
can.
Pardon me.
Tom, you'd asked about sort of the implications of something being on and then coming off, and I wanted to show the maps because I think it's relevant to share that over a 50-year history, there have been roads added and removed. It's not a static document. It does not have to be static. I would look at both the comprehensive plan and the official map as a strong, the best information the city has to provide to the community and to the development community as possible. If it is the intent of the city for a roadway to go through somewhere, it's a very valuable tool for everybody. It helps developers to think of their project at the very beginning, which might be 5 or 6 years out. And we use it in our office on a very regular basis for anybody who's moving into town, changing their location, curious about their neighborhood. Probably the question that we get more than any other question from residents moving in is, what can I expect to be around me? And so while something could be on the official map but not really intended to be used, I think that sends a challenging message to folks. And so, if the council wanted to reserve future rights of way, like we did on that purple one for Old Cross Road, and say, there's no intent in the next 40 years to build a street here, but we want to get the right of way, that may be possible. But if I were a resident moving in, I might say, well, 40 years might be sooner, might be later. So I'd always advocate, if the city has a clear vision of what it wants and doesn't want, to put it on the map.
Okay. Megan.
Yeah, thank you. I received a phone call from a resident of Butler Farms today, expressing some, I think, distress is the word, due to the noise of, I think they're trying to break through some rock, and there's this long road off of Golf Course Road.
Long Drive, yeah.
Long Drive. Is that on the map? And what is the plan for that road?
Long Drive is a dead-end road off Golf Course Road. Long Drive is probably more famously known as the actual JM Golf of the Supreme Court decision from 2008. That was the one that had been initially denied a 10-lot subdivision. It was once called Taft. And that was the one that was ultimately approved by the Supreme Court back in 2008. And then it got wrapped up into the master plan and all that for years afterwards. So it's a dead end road to serve 10 dwelling units in and around the 13th hole.
All right. Okay. Yeah. And it's just, all right. It's just for residents. Okay. I wasn't actually aware that was going to go in at all. So that was news to me. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear them pounding away up there with excavators with the digger points going because they're up there on that ridge. It's all ledge. It's all ledge.
We're in regular touch with them to know that be as done as quickly as they can be.
How much longer do you think it will take? Because it's been 2 weeks so far, according to this resident.
Our zoning administrator told me that she was expecting to know an answer to that in the next day or two. I'm happy to update councilors as soon as I know. I asked her this afternoon and she's been in communication with them, so.
Thank you. Yeah, because there are people working from home on orders and it's just racking their heads, racking their brains.
Yeah, understandably.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Right. So thanks, Paul, for that presentation. That was a great retrospective of where all those roads came from. And one of the things that probably wasn't taken into account in the past was, the focus was on transportation efficiency, taking away some of the burden on some of the north-south intersections by creating east-west connections, which is all great. But now we know there are these beautiful wildlife corridors that, for example, Swiss Street would cut right through, right? And then now we have the one from Midland to South Village, and it cuts right through the Great Swamp. And so, you know, you also have Brayburn, which curves around and kind of cuts right through another wildlife corridor, which the developer was nice enough to move some homes so that it's just a road and no homes. But I mean, some of those east-west connections just start to feel antithetical to what we are trying to do, which is to promote a better environment for the city rather than one that just focuses on transportation, cars, whatever. So I just want to make that point that, you know, when you're talking about transportation, you all have to think about the north-south transportation on the 4 legs and the 2 legs that are non-human. And I don't know how we accommodate both of those requirements and not endanger one with respect to the other.
That's a good point, Tim. And I would add to it that one thing that whenever I'm speaking with transportation engineers and transportation planners is to try to reset the conversation at the beginning. That transportation it's not a conclusion in and of itself. It's not a project in and of itself. It's a project to serve the movement of people to do all the other things that a community might want to do. The other consideration that is very closely related to what you just said, Tim, is what is the long-term planning objective around the amount of need for land use? You know, how large of a neighborhood are we planning in the southeast quadrant and south and east of there? Because some of this, of course, is designed related to projections for need that existed when this was put forward. And so in the early 90s, the city set an objective of 1.2 dwelling units per acre in the southeast quadrant. These things are iterative to one another. So I agree that you raise an important values question, and then there's what is the population to be served? And then I would balance that with again, we don't want cut-throughs, and I think it's really important to study these things to make sure that we're not moving people off existing transportation routes. At the same time, we don't want to long-term be in a position where, say, a Spear Street needs to be widened to 4 lanes at a future generation because there's no other way to get between neighborhoods. So those are all to be balanced together, and they're not easy answers for sure.
Other comments?
Well, I think I have to echo what Tim said, is that, say again, Paul, the last time this was completely updated was how many years ago?
The official map itself dates from 2004. The comprehensive plan is 2016. But acknowledging that the comprehensive plan said that one thing it needed to do was to update east-west roads analysis. So
yeah, well, enough has changed. I mean, just as an example, the open space report that Alan Strong's committee completed gave us a lot of new information about what's out there in our lands. And that will impact, I think, where we can realistically look at putting roads or not putting roads from a wildlife and a natural resource perspective. So I think we have, I'd say, a lot of work to do, but we have some work to do to get this current, recognizing that things have changed. The landscape has changed, not the physical landscape, but the people landscape fairly rapidly over the last 15 years. And that we can't work other than a baseline with what was created that many years ago, even though it's not really that many years ago. We gotta bring this up to date. I think that's what you were saying, Tim, in light of the current considerations and our priorities for open spaces, natural resources, and wildlife. Is that close to what you were suggesting?
Yeah, I mean, we're in IZ still. We've done others have done a ton of work, which I really appreciate, to point out our natural areas and those areas which have great value ecologically. So it's kind of like, well, so in one sense, you could say that you're shooting yourself in the foot by putting a road through, you know, a swamp or a forest or through a meadow, when it connects to other, you know, large passageways for animals. Especially, I mean, part of the Jam Golf settlement was like acquiring a lot of wetland and undevelopable areas along the golf course, right? And those were part of this corridor. So although and as the pandemic has shown, traffic has been cut down because a lot of people are working from home. Who knows, in the future, maybe nobody will drive anywhere. And
Right.
they'll just all stay home all the time and have Instacart deliver everything. Who knows? In which case, then we can just start blocking off all the roads everywhere, and you know, and then Amazon drones will bring everything to us. So, but anyway, I just want to keep in mind the fact that, you know, we're not the only inhabitants here. There are other inhabitants, and we need to keep them, you know, to balance that against each other so that we have the right amount of human versus non-human, you know, meshing. So.
Agreed.
Tom?
So I just want to say two things, and I'll stop talking after this, I promise. Paul, I heard you say that the last comprehensive report said the east-west corridors is one of the things we need to update the analysis of. I think that makes a lot of sense. So spending some time to comprehensively study this, study the east-west corridors as described in the comprehensive plan. So I think it makes sense to dust that thing off the shelf and update it with the current information that we have, whatever that means. I don't know does that carry a cost associated to it in your mind, or is that just planning time and commitment over the next year or so? What are the implications of supporting an east-west update to that east-west and corridor analysis update?
I guess, Tom, what I would suggest is first, and the Planning Commission has started to look into this a little bit, but first set what are the objectives as to what the Council and Commission want to be studying, then see what questions may have already been answered. As I said, the Tilly Drive study just gave a lot of really good information for at least one of the connections. And then from there, it may be that additional research is needed, in which case the best source for that would be to put it in as a request to the Regional Planning Commission as part of their annual work plan. This is the exact kind of thing that they do, and they when they fund projects, it's typically at least an 80% federal funding for that. So that puts the burden at the local level much lower than if we were to just take it ourselves. The annual timeline for that is to apply we start the work in October, to apply in January, to start the work in July. So that could be something that's looked at next year. In the meantime, it could, you know, we just completed the presentation, or the RPC just completed the presentation on Tilly Drive. There's the final reports due at the end of this month. There's probably a lot of useful information in there to help start to answer these questions immediately, especially as it relates to Swiss Street, and balance out all the different important priorities, including what Tim and Dave have just spoken about.
Great. Well, that's I think one of the reasons I wanted to put this on the agenda is it seems as if this is a conversation and discussion that we need to have, given some of the studies we've done. I think as people have pointed out, I don't know if it's a new, but a greater appreciation for all the aspects of living in a town, for people, for businesses, for animals, for our natural resources. And I needed more information about sort of the history of these roads and planning behind them. And I'm still not positive, and maybe this is where what a study might focus on, but what is really our purpose for having so many east-west connectors? I mean, what's enough? What will serve the needs of the community and all the needs to the greatest extent versus just having, you know, every, I don't know, 2 miles or 5 miles, another connector. So we're more like a city grid than, you know, a suburban community, I guess, with a very dense downtown. I mean, that's kind of one of the other conversations that, and I think policies that the city and the council has embraced is there are great places for really dense housing, and it's near services and it's near bus lines and shopping and so forth, and that's a value that we kind of have embraced with city center. So do we want city centers all over the city? You know, I don't know, but if you put enough roads through, you probably can create that. So I would like to see some thought go into a review looking at the needs of the community through our the lenses as we see it now and not from 40 years ago. And you know, we may very, I mean, I'm not suggesting I have all the answers or the council has thought about this enough tonight, but to me, this was kind of the beginning of the conversation. And what is it that we, what are our goals for this that will help inform policy decisions? Tim?
Just one last thing is that, you know, you can't see the future, but you can try and plan on those things that are valuable to you now that might be viable in the future. And for example, the Clare solar field, right? It's 366 solar trackers. It's in back of Cider Mill 1 near my house. I mean, it's been up for at least 5 years. Those panels have a 25-year rated lifetime. They might go a little longer, but, you know, Mr. Larkin might decide to extract all those posts from the ground and throw them all away and build, you know, houses there. And then there's all that land that's up north that abuts Butler Farms. So the only way to get to it would probably be, you know, an entrance from Heinsberg Road and maybe Cider Mill Drive extension. So, you know, when you look into the crystal ball of the future, there are things that we can't see yet, but I understand some of these roads are important for future planning purposes. So, you know, we have to think very carefully about, you know, either keeping them on the map or deciding that they really should come off. And like Paul said, they could go back on the map someday if need be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the really hard thing about planning for future roadways is that we don't have a crystal ball for the future. And for better or for worse, roadways are they're basically there forever. That's why I started with the Beers Atlas, and I think sometime in the past, I think I gave a presentation to Councilor Kaufman's class, and I think I started by showing Roman roads.
Yes, you did.
That are still in existence, and so, for better or worse, roads are probably the footprint that remain more so than almost anything in our communities.
Okay, I think there's 2 interesting notes in the chat box from Donna. Note that Burlington is blocking off more residential streets to through traffic. So I think when we think ahead, and Tim's comments are well taken, you can see what has been the result of lots of through roads and use that to inform what you think your planning ought to be. And Donna also says Williston has a planning policy of only low density development south of 189 and maintaining more natural resources in those parts of the town. I am assuming that also includes not, you know, building lots of roads to get quickly from here to there.
Yeah, and it's a balance. There's
For sure.
big picture macro level connections that are, you know, connecting entire swaths of the city, and then there's much more micro level little connections. And I think that the more recent planning thinking on the small connections has been that small distributed connections makes for better quality of life than relying on 1 or 2 roads. That's You mentioned city center. That's obviously a much more urban version of this, but part of the challenge of everybody's frustration about Dorset Street and Williston Road is that it's the only way people can go. And so by building Garden Street, Market Street, and the other ones, it will allow for a more natural, slower speed grid, which is, that's the small level connections versus the big ones. And it's when each of them is needed is an important debate to be had.
Mhm. Well, and I thought it was interesting that I can't remember which, maybe it was the Swift Street one. One of the positive things, I guess, was that it would reduce the traffic on Kennedy Drive. Yet, to my mind, Kennedy Drive was built the way it was built to carry a lot of cars.
Right, and it's
That was
under
its
capacity.
purpose. So I don't know if I want 4 more of those so we can have, a whole bunch of east-west connectors with very little cars on any of them. Yet you're really bisecting some of the nicest natural resources that we have left in the city. And once they're gone, they're gone. So I think we need some more thought. Are there any other comments at this point? I mean, this isn't a decision-making discussion. It's just kind of starting to lay it out there and think about, what we should be thinking. It looks like Leslie would like to say something. Or,
Yeah, this is my husband, Peter.
okay. Hi, Peter.
He'd like to say something.
All right, Peter, you're welcome to say something too.
Oh, thank you, Helen. Appreciate it. And hi, folks, people I know from past years working with the city council when I was with the MPO and other times. A couple of comments on this discussion, which I found very, very interesting. And I think Paul makes some excellent points, from sort of a planning philosophy, planning perspective in terms of the east-west connections and so forth. One observation I would make, just based on much of the research that I'm familiar with around the US and around the world. And for those of you who don't know me, I have 30 years of planning and economic development experience, both here in Vermont and around the world. One comment I would make is the idea of what Helen brought up about Kennedy Drive, perhaps obviating the need for a Swift Street extension or a connection between Cider Mill and Heinsberg Road and so forth. I can understand that, but also I think it's important in an era where we have such concerns about greenhouse gas emissions and climate change and other environmental impacts to keep in mind as growth continues to spread out. Despite our best efforts, there still is suburban / exurban growth that will probably happen for this foreseeable future. We have to keep in mind that if we don't build some of those east-west connections, in my opinion, we're going to force more and more cars onto circuitous routes that are far less fuel and energy efficient and contribute to congestion and further greenhouse gas emissions. So I would suggest strongly that be part of any analysis, a new analysis of east-west connections, those kinds of impacts. The second observation or suggestion I would have is that you think, and however you go forward with these analyses, you think about how that kind of east-west connectivity, or any connectivity, in fact, in the city, facilitates and supports access to economic opportunities and for different populations across the demographic spectrum. And it really is, South Burlington, and I think you all recognize, really is, these are not just municipal within the boundaries of South Burlington issues. These are truly regional issues. And so I think it's important as South Burlington, as an employment center, as a residential center, that we think very carefully about the broader economic impacts and benefits of east-west connectivity investments. And I'll leave it there. I'm happy to answer any clarification questions or anything, but again, I just wanted to contribute my thoughts to the conversation here.
Great, thank you. Are there any other comments, either from council members or the public, or any summary, Paul? Should we just keep the conversation going? You mentioned that the planning commission, I mean, they've got lots to do in the next couple months, so I'm not about to give them one more, excuse me, new big project, but you know, at some point, this is something that they might want to look at. Or
Yeah, I think that there's value in a lot of value in trying to take this up in the not too distant future. If not in its entirety, which would be ideal, then at least examining Swiss Street specifically, because I know that that's one that has a lot of interest. We have some recent information on it, and it, you know, it intersects with some of the work that under interim zoning. So you know, looking at that probably in the shorter term would be a good idea, and maybe starting to tee up a larger update of the East-West study for next year would be a really good longer term plan as well. And of course, any guidance that the council or commission wants to give us in terms of prioritization of this kind of work, we're always at work at your pleasure. So,
are there other perspectives or people that the council would like to hear from at some point on this topic, or you want to let it, want to cogitate a while and figure out what you want to do? I don't need an action plan tonight, that's for sure.
So about cogitate, but
I don't think we ought to let it slide too long. I mean, it's something that's got to be looked at before too long, whether it's us or the planning commission or us in conjunction with the planning commission. Or I honestly don't know who all should be taking a look at it, but we shouldn't let it sit from now until eternity. We should look at it sometime, you know, before the end of this year, I would say, if that makes sense to the rest of you.
Okay, Megan, did you want to?
Yeah, I think it would be good to reach out to the business community. I think to talk to them about the visioning and the role of roads, the role of commuting. I really do think that one of the lessons of this pandemic is that for not everybody, of course, but for a lot of people, business has been able to continue thanks to telecommuting. And I know that traffic has picked up recently, but there, I think, are maybe some lessons that if we're really serious about reducing those emissions into our atmosphere, unless someone can somehow capture CO2, we're waiting for that big invention. But right now, we're on a course to heating this planet to an uninhabitable level. And so I would hope that we could include in that vision alternate forms of working and thinking about, you know, what is the role of the car that it will play in this future. That whether or not we like it, it's going to continue to get hot unless, you know, I don't know if there is an unless, unfortunately. Yeah, but it will get worse if we don't do something.
Tim, did you have your hand up? No, okay. Tom, did you? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Paul. I think you've set some thinking in motion, and I mean, I think I certainly agree with David that we shouldn't just sort of say, oh, well, we solved this, we talked about it once. And I like the idea of talking to the business community, particularly around how they see business. And when I say the business community, not necessarily the housing development community, because we know what they're going to say. They we need to build more houses and you need more roads into those houses, and there's a shortage and we need to meet that need. But I think the other piece in terms of the traffic and the need for the connectors is appropriately linked to work. And it would be interesting to find out, what kind of workplaces people are envisioning. And maybe we should be working on better, broadband, so I don't have to be in one room in my house in order to be on these.
Those are great recommendations, all around great ideas. I think as a very first step, I'll reach out to the Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
My understanding is, though it's not the focus of the 89 study, part of what they're doing in the 89 corridor study is testing some of those questions and the assumptions around the future generally, not specific necessarily to the 89 corridor, but what do travel patterns look like in the future? So there is, I think, some thought going on in the business community, in the energy community, about what does the future of transportation look like. So that may be a first way to start to tap into some of those questions that you and Councilor Kaufman have just raised.
Great. Okay, well, thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay. Right, now we have item 8 is reviewing and prioritizing of issues currently pending on the bike rack. I wanted to just sort of go back to this.
Michael. Yeah, I saw Michael. He did.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael, did you, Mittag, I didn't see your face, sorry. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I did have a comment as a follow-up on something that Megan said, and that is involving the business community, but somehow involving the residential community, if you like, and figuring out a way to draw them in to this discussion on east-west connectors, because I think for a lot of people, the way things transpire now seems to be a sort of scattershot of complaints from one individual or another. I hear them, I'm sure you hear them from individuals, but they aren't coordinated in any way. And so somehow, if the city wants to have a meaningful dialogue about east-west corridors, got to figure out a way to draw the community in somehow. I don't have an answer, but there must be a way to pull them in so that they participate in this effort.
Okay, great. Good point. Thank you. Okay, moving on to then the bike rack issues. A couple new ones have come up, and I wanted to, remember to look at them and see if there's any ones ripe for conversation by the council or taking up. So we have, let's see, streetlight policy. We have airport noise survey. We evaluate water billing and rate structure, declaring racism as a healthcare issue, and authorizing the painting of the Black Lives Matter mural on a city street. Are there any of those that people are really interested in taking up sooner rather than later?
I was, just to start here, the airport noise survey, that was part of morphed into this, what was it, a comment box that would be online. And I believe Tom was also interested in that. And I don't know that we've ever really put that together. Some kind of electric comment box. Have I missed it? Have I missed it, or?
No, I don't think we have it. I think, maybe the consensus thing was going to help us gather some information, but that's sort of under, as I understand it, is getting tooled. and it's not ready for prime time again.
So I think what I call is there was discussion about emulating what other towns have, which is I still think would make a lot of sense is if we had a simple web form. Since we got rid of see, click, fix, I see a lot of value in having a channel, a routing point for citizens to raise any concern, be it noise, be it a pothole, be it how do I answer a question about what development or an east-west connector might be. If you look at Middlebury, if you look at other Vermont cities, they have a fillable form on their website. So it's something that is very easy this day and age, and you can automate it so that it goes to either different email addresses, depending on what category of question they have. I think it's well worth our time. I believe the last time I looked at our website, it directs everybody to call us. I find calling us is to be terribly inefficient because then somebody needs to write down and record what the details are, whereas web forms can capture electronically, be it a sound concern or at the airport or otherwise. Those are trackable, they're referenceable, and they're forwardable. So that's the discussion I remember that inspired this bike rack issue, and I think it's well worth our attention. But I stopped pressing on it because it just seemed like there wasn't a lot of momentum. But I maybe now that see, click, fix is out of our budget, we're not spending the $5,000 for that. Maybe it makes more sense to look at this again.
Is that something that other council members would like to follow up with? We should, if it's something we want to look at, should we, find out about the technology and the pricing and how it might work?
Don't other cities that have airports, don't they have like web resources that are part of the responsibility of the governance for the airport to accumulate complaints from residences around the airport when noise happens, so that we can better help the airport to pinpoint an airline that didn't do something if they're supposed to follow certain procedures? Or I thought I'd heard that somewhere that there was they had certain web pages or an easy way to register a noise complaint at the time that it happens with an airport. So to me, that's a responsibility of the BTV or BIA.
I don't disagree. Well, we can certainly follow up with the airport. I mean, I know they have things. I don't think everyone. I mean, some of it is the Air Guard, and people never seem to be satisfied with getting their complaints registered and
just to remind everybody, this had to do with noise mitigation. This was a way to determine which areas in the city, and particularly around the airport, there were the most disturbances in, so that when we were going to be in those NCP, conversations, we could say, well, we've really heard a lot from this part of town, and what could we do for this, for these residents? That's where it came from. So it wasn't a complaint line. It was more, how do we plan for those NCP conversations? What kind of data can we use in order to back up any requests that we would like to advance as a representative, body?
Well, we could certainly find out from airport administration how they can work on that with us. I think Tom's issue is broader than the airport noise, but that could certainly be a component. And
just to connect the two, the residents don't know where to go when they hear a plane that's really loud, so they don't know which website. So they're probably going to go to their elected officials, and that's where that routing point, where it can have a simple drop down where you choose one of a category of issues and concerns. It would help us direct it to the airport or wherever it needs to go. So that's all I'm saying, is a web form to receive spectrum of questions and issues, so that they don't call their counselors whenever there's a problem. Instead, maybe they go to the website and fill out the form. Maybe that could be a good thing. Other towns do it. I think it's worth our attention, but it's just a matter of pressing on it.
Okay. Kevin, I know you've got a lot going on and you have a tight budget and all of those kinds of things. Is this a feasible conversation about including that in our web design and
Yeah,
for
I
the
can,
community?
I can talk to Coralie about how we would go about doing that. I think Tom's probably right on this about you should be able to add a feature like that to a website.
Mhm.
And the fillable form thing is not a new technology, so the routing issues I'm sure are available. So let me talk to Coralie about how we would go about doing that. It does seem like there should be a means for a member of the public to communicate directly a complaint or even an appreciation that they have for something that's going on in the city. I get them. I know you guys get them. I get 3 or 4 different calls or communications today about something, and it would be nice to have a centralized place to go to. So let me look into that, and I'll try to report that to the council for your meeting on the 18th.
That'd
If
be
you
great.
do that, tell her that we want a drop-down list that has every possible complaint that they could have and who it should go to. Potholes, number 1. My neighbor's noisy, number 2.
Dog poop. Did I say one for dog?
Dog park is number 3.
I got one today that there's no possible way you could ever figure out that you would get a complaint like this.
It's at the
Go
bottom.
ahead.
Then. It's the
What
new
was
one.
it on?
Just keep adding new ones.
Oh,
I can't tell you over the airways or in pleasant company, but
oh, okay. All right, well, we can certainly, and it could be, I guess, with the design, you can always add another category as they unfold.
yeah,
So,
this would be
Okay.
like miscellaneous to the 10th power.
You got 2 drop downs. One says, I'm mad as a hornet. I'm happy as a clam. I'm tepid as, room temperature milk. And then they pick the subject matter, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
let me, we'll look into that.
okay, great.
And what was the streetlight policy? I can't recall what that.
Well, I think there
Get a
was a
second
concern a
chapter.
long time
Long
ago
time ago.
with the street lights on some of the, like Kennedy Drive, for example, walking at night, a lot of people didn't feel safe because there weren't street lights on some of our walkable streets, I guess.
Well,
And
I think that's,
there had been a prior policy, I think, Helen, that
yeah.
that they turn off every other street light for
Oh,
energy
right.
savings, but then we've converted them all to LED. So we're saving all that. So we've turned the lights back on because there were, even busy roads like Shelburne Road, they're very dark areas on Shelburne
Right.
Road. Just
Right.
wasn't safe. So my sense is that you can probably take that off the list.
Okay. If that's
we're
okay with
spending-
everyone. I mean,
we
I
spending
guess
like-
if we take it off and then someone complains, we'll know we
Are we
misunderstood.
spending like 12,000 a month on streetlights? Is that about right?
I don't know what the number is, Tim. We own some of our streetlights, we lease some of our streetlights, and then there's the electricity issues. I don't know what that is off the top of my head for the electricity.
Okay,
I think we should remove it probably.
okay. How about the water billing and the rate structure?
Well, they
I
have
know
new
someone who's
software now.
interested on that is listening in.
They have a new
Yep.
billing software, right? So you get your 1-year history now, which is new, and that's an improvement. But Barb's service has always been critical. Oh, there she is.
Yes,
She's always
she
been
wants to
critical
say
of-
something, yeah.
She departs the area for a long period of time and isn't using any water and then has to pay this, base fee for water that
How
she
much
doesn't
is
use.
that base fee? Yeah, how much is that again?
About $85 a quarter.
Just, if I make one statement before Barb takes the floor, I think the other thrust of Barb is not just the amount that she has to pay. I think Barb is ready to pay, but there's ways that we could structure this model to incent more conservation of water. And that's where if we just look at that base fee and how many gallons you get for it, so a lower amount, but then with a higher marginal rate, it's worth our attention to try to get people to think about how much water they're cycling through our system. Am I wrong, Barb, please?
No, it really did. Yes, I get these bills that say 0, and when there's COVID, I get more of these bills that say 0. But the conversation really started with some folks in the neighborhood here some of whom live on fixed incomes and live alone. And we're saying we're paying a lot and we don't use a lot of water. But there was another whole group that was really talking about the fact that there is no incentive for people to conserve water because the limit is pretty high before your bill gets added to. So it was a two-part conversation.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have the new software. Is this a South Burlington issue, or is this an issue that we have to work with the Champlain Water District? I mean, that's where we get our water, right? For most of you.
It's both, Helen,
both.
but it's mostly a South Burlington issue.
Okay.
And at one point, Justin said it was going to be pretty costly to figure out this particular issue, but they've been talking about this improved software now for at least 18 months. And in the middle of COVID, I know it's not a high priority, but I just hope that it won't go off the list, and that we could, if it were going to be $20,000, that's a lot of money. If we could do it for something less than that, then I think it's worth it in terms of the environment and also in terms of the people that we're hearing now talking about all kinds of things related to taxes and bills and the rest of it. And it might be an incentive that's it's a double win.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's keep it on the list. Should we agree that when COVID is more under control, we could go back to this and see if the software could handle this? Dave, you got your hand up.
Yeah, we're looking for exactly what, are we looking for a policy change or what?
Billing
here?
change.
It's a billing change that reflects maybe a policy that we would like to incentivize conservation, which ultimately keeps our wastewater treatment plants, able to last for a longer amount of time because we're not using up the capacity, I guess. I mean, if you really want to look long term.
I agree. If we can use software to incentivize water conservation, great. I always have trouble every time we talk about water and sewer. But Barb, what'd you say your quarterly charge with no use was $88?
I think it was about $84, Dave. And my understanding is that probably I should be billed roughly, these are round numbers, don't quote me on this, but about $50 a quarter because I need to pay for all of the infrastructure that's outside my water usage.
I understand that because, and this is why I say I chuckle every time we talk about this. I just paid my water sewer bill over in the Adirondacks on a lot that I own. It has zero usage and has for years. And my quarterly bill was $265.50. So every time we talk about South Burlington, I think, doggone it, that's a heck of a deal. But you're right. But I'm paying 4 times as much with no usage. So it's and that's for infrastructure. Small town, not enough people flushing toilets or using showers, and the darn infrastructure is brutally expensive. And so you're right. The infrastructure has to be paid for. But if we can incentivize people, let's do it.
Don't go to Grand Isle.
Okay, Sandy, Julie, did you want to make a comment?
I don't know how easy this would be, especially because it's quarterly billing, but I can remember when Green Mountain Power had an incentivized rate if you didn't use more than 600 kilowatts a month. And I think now the problem is, how do you monitor what you're using? It's harder when you get a quarterly bill, but if there were, I think an incentive like that where you had a lower unit, is it cubic centimeters or cubic meters or whatever, a lower unit rate, unit price, if you used a reasonable but conservative amount of water, that would be great. So I certainly support the goal, but I can also understand it may not be something you want to deal with right now.
Okay, Tim, thank you. Tim, were you waving?
I have a feeling that the sewer and water division have a kind of like a fixed cost every year based upon whatever their capital requirements are, and they're coming up on upgrades to sewer treatment plants. So they've got to get this much income every year in order to satisfy their needs, right? So you got to spread that out across your billing mass of people. If you, just to say, if you decrease, the cost to people who aren't there that use zero water, you will increase the cost to other residents. Just keep that in mind, right? It's going to be a mass balance issue. So the question is, what is the minimum amount that they should charge for people that don't use any water? That really is the question.
Uh-huh. Well, that's Bob's question for sure.
South Burlington
John's
still
question
is
is
cheaper
more, I
than
wanna
Burlington for water and sewer. Just so you
incentivize.
know.
Yeah, the other piece for me is that if there is a household with 2 adults and 4 children, they are using a whole lot more water. And they should basically be paying for the use of that water, as opposed to, I shouldn't be subsidizing them. Even when I'm here, I don't get up to the minimum, and I don't know what the minimum is, but whatever it is, I look at it and say, well, I don't use it, but that's a good thing. I'm doing my part to conserve water. But
1,000
personally,
cubic feet.
I think we all need to pay that infrastructure cost.
Okay. Well, so we'll keep it on the list and figure out when is a good time to approach this.
Thank you.
I mean, I think Public Works is just trying to get back into the swing and catching up on a lot of older stuff. So, I mean, again, I want to be sensitive to their capacity, but I think it's a good issue. Declaring racism as a healthcare issue. Are people interested in getting a little more information about that, what that might mean?
Healthcare issue. Okay.
Yeah, as a healthcare issue. Several other communities have adopted some kind of resolution that supports that. I think Sandy Dooley recommended or asked us to take this up, so it got on the list. I now want to know if this is something you would like to take up sooner rather than later. So Sandy, did you want to speak more to this? We can't hear you. You're on mute.
It's not just, there's a term, it's a public health emergency, I think, or I could find out. But the CDC would really like the president to do this, but that's unlikely. But there is a lot of research that it's really a public health. Racism contributes tremendously in a negative way toward the public health status of our society. So I can find out, I can find a declaration from one of the other municipalities in Vermont and send it to you.
Okay, so it would be more a resolution that we support this concept. It doesn't mean we have a health officer, but it's Justin, right? I think.
Yeah, what is are we adding? Yeah, what would this lead to, Sandy?
My sense is that it's recognition, and there might be situations in which it would guide policy, but I think we do lots of things that, in terms of, there are, the work that we do I read somewhere that our police chief did special training on implicit bias and those kinds of things. So I think we are acting, sort of walking the walk, and this would be sort of talking the talk. But I think the resolution, I'll look up some resolutions, and that would give more information to respond to that question.
Okay, why don't you send them to us and we can figure out whether we want to have it as an agenda item.
Sure.
Unless there's no interest. Is there no interest? I mean, I'm willing to look at it. I'm with Megan. I'm not exactly sure what it would do, but resolutions that support different important issues aren't a total waste of paper. They express the community's concern and support.
I don't want to do something that will just make us feel good. I mean,
True.
I would rather walk the walk. So if, this talking can help us step forward, that's a better use of our time. you know, so I'd like to know what that goal is to, you know, if there's a resolution to put together, who should it be sent to? Who can we put pressure on? I mean, that kind of thing, I think is most important.
Tom?
This is definitely worth our attention. And I know Kevin's going to cringe when I say this, but I think looking at our committee structures and how we think of racism and systemic racism and diversity and how to make the community a more diverse place is worth considering. I'm not saying a new committee. I know, Kevin, we've talked about that in the past, but in other bodies that I function in, we are taking another closer look at how to incorporate a diversity lens and the identifying systemic racism issues in everything that we do. And that can be done by broadening the charge of standing governing bodies or committees. So I support further exploring this resolution, and I agree with you, Megan. We don't want to just do something so that we can sleep easier at night. We want to be committed to actual action on this. But I don't know enough about what that commitment would look like to be able to say I'm full throttle. And I also don't know how much capacity Kevin has to move this forward. But I welcome advice, and maybe we could charge one of our committees and broadening their scope to start putting some boxes around what this could look like. But I support it.
Tim? Thank
Great.
you.
So one of the ways that we could walk the walk is ask Kevin, have the city employees undergone any type of recent, like in the last 2 years, diversity training, being educated about racism, you know, issues around Black Lives Matter and the current protests, and have they had the opportunity to explore those issues with a consultant or somebody who's really knowledgeable and can be very honest about the issue with them. I'm just curious. So for example, at Global Foundries, we had Derica Blackman address us at an HR all hands session electronically across the whole corporation. And it was really, really eye-opening for a lot of people to have somebody sit down and give their perspective on their background, being a Black woman, and her perspective on racism and Black Lives Matter, and explain white privilege and all of those things. And I think that a lot of people in our corporation had never had that message ever delivered to them before. And it was just the tip of the iceberg, but it was a really good start to a way to open up the conversational path for management and employees to come to some kind of an early understanding about how we treat each other. So that's a question for Kevin. I mean, have the employees gone through any kind of training like that?
Yeah, the police department has, Tim. Our police have had several trainings now. Most recently, they viewed the online. There's a movie or a documentary, I guess, on Netflix called 13th, and they facilitated a department-wide viewing that was facilitated by an outside expert on that. And they've also had other trainings over the last year or so, and those are ongoing. The rest of the city has not. The rest of city employees have not had that kind of training in the recent months. Of course, we have, it's been a little disruptive because of COVID, but we do have essential employees that have continued on their shifts. So we haven't had that kind of training citywide, but certainly the police department has.
Would that be something you would consider offering to all of the employees? Sounds like it would be really valuable.
Yes. Yeah, we do trainings. We do trainings on certain things for all employees. We do workplace violence, sexual harassment in the workplace. Certainly this subject matter would fit into the series of trainings that we require, actually require those every year. So it would fit in with that. Yep.
Was there a cost to the, the workshop or whatever it was you call it, Tim, that Global Foundries offered?
Well, I'm sure that this private consultant, is paid for her work. Yeah. I don't know what it was,
Yeah,
but
I was just curious.
yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe the Vermont League of Cities and Towns has some I don't know, contacts or suggestions of people that do this for communities, that would be good.
Mhm.
Okay.
I
How about
would
the
look-
last one? I'm sorry, pardon?
The employee assistance plan, those people should give something like that. I mean, that's right up their alley, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know if our provider does that, those programs or not, Tim. We'd have to look at that provider,
Uh-huh.
our provider, I should say.
Right. Well, maybe with all that's happened, they've added that to the repertoire.
It's
Sounds
very
like it
possible.
might be important.
Yeah, it's very possible.
So. The last one is authorizing the painting of the Black Lives Matter mural on a city street. I know we've all gotten letters or phone calls requesting that. Kevin was going to look into the, legality of that and how you go about doing that. Is it an activity that the city council would like to have a public conversation about and go forward or not? Tom?
I fully support doing this. I would just only do it, fully support it if Tim Barrett's wife leads the charge.
Kevin, did you get any information?
No, I think the council has the authority to approve this. The council has the authority to approve most matters related to public roads that are owned by the city, except naming, interestingly. That's a planning commission function. But beyond that, I think the council can authorize works of art or statements of policy or statements on an issue like this. So if you pass a resolution, let's say, you may not even need to do that, but a resolution that would authorize it, as long as it's on a city street, I think that that's fine. I caution you as a group, I'm not trying to deter this, but there have been communities in the country that have gone ahead and done this, and then they've been approached by others who want to put another message on the streets that hasn't been as widely accepted in the populace. And so I know at least one community has gone ahead and painted over the Black Lives Matter painted in the road because of that. They fully supported the Black Lives Matter painting, but when somebody came along with something that wasn't as acceptable, in a sense, their solution was to deny that and then paint over the Black Lives Matter thing. So I don't know if you would see that in South Burlington, but it's just a cautionary thing.
Okay.
But
Well,
the council has the authority to do this.
Okay. So does someone want to take on this issue, develop a resolution, or think about the best place to put it, have a public hearing and get some feedback from the public about whether, or do you just want to go ahead and do it?
Well, I would also say, Helen, as far as I know, we've been approached by one individual.
Right.
And that's fine. But then it comes around to, okay, if the council authorizes it, how's it going to get done? I would suggest the Public Works Department shouldn't be doing it, but if there were a larger group advancing this notion that had the capability to actually do the work, that would be one thing. I don't think one individual has the capability to do it by themselves.
Right.
I was approached by two individuals separately. And just from looking on social media, I think the one individual reached out to the community through social media and found a level of interest there to could galvanize a group. I would prefer that it just be given some thought. I just personally speaking, I really found that the way this community came around the middle school's banner to be quite moving. I thought it was also something that was unique to South Burlington. And I found that to be in itself a very powerful statement. I remember driving past the school campus and I saw Officer Grealis there helping, I think, a parent, you know, raise the banner and really secure it. And there was something, I wish I mean, maybe something shouldn't be captured on camera because it just cheapens it. There was just something very beautiful in that. And I think that this community has rallied around the middle school's banner. And I just also want to speak to the message we all received from a community member, very upset about the banner, very upset about the public gathering that goes on regularly around that banner, and being held back by his spouse to not go and, you know, pronounce something contrary to this statement. And our chief of police, who was copied along with other police officers, and all of us were copied, but it was our chief of police who very authoritatively said that this is peaceful protest and my job is to make sure that that peaceful protest can go on. It was such a beautiful response to this email. I thanked our chief. It was the perfect response.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want us to be very thoughtful and very, you know, deliberate in how we move. I think we as a community should really recognize what the middle school did do and how the community has galvanized around that banner from various.
I stand with them every Wednesday, every other Wednesday. It's great. And there's more and more people that come every time. So that is another way. And I agree with you. Well, how do you want to proceed? Just keep. I mean, I think a number of good points were made. I don't want to have to turn around and paint it over if someone, you know, wants to paint something else that would be very divisive to our community. Tom?
I just want to echo what I think I heard Kevin say, which is I want to express that I'm sensing the council is supportive of this happening, but I'm hesitant to commit tax dollars entirely to this, as well as attention resources, where I'd love to see us find ways to support a community group that wants to do this. So I think I heard you say that, Kevin, that you want us, if there's a group out there that wants to lead this, that we can channel our support and clear the path for it to happen. That I think makes a lot of sense.
Yes, Tom, that's exactly my point.
Any other comments? Well, I guess we'll put a call out there to the community. If this is, you know, something people want to work on, then we'll work with you. Sandy?
I just wanted to say I would encourage you to explore this. I wonder if someone could ask the middle schoolers what they think, because it may be difficult in the middle of winter to do the Wednesday afternoon gatherings, but I wouldn't see it as a substitute. And I would think, I don't know how much the solid waste district has that remixed paint.
All right.
We could do it ecologically if that were the case. Anyway, I would really strongly encourage the council to try to find a way to work with others to do this. My proposal for this street is Market Street, our new city center.
Okay, well, that's another discussion one would have to have, where to put it, for sure. Okay. If there's no other comments or thoughts, number 9, reports from councilors on committee assignments. Has anyone met? Tim?
Yes, so the Pension Advisory Committee met, I think it was a week and a half ago, approximately. Wasn't it last week? So Pat Blizak from SEI was there with his colleague, and also Eric Shate was there. He is our actuary, and he presented, remember when we had our auditor present? And Eric was there, and then Eric came back like probably 2 weeks later and presented again about the pension. So the highlights of the pension quickly, because I don't want to take a lot of time here, is that the second quarter was a good quarter because it was kind of a rebound from a bad first quarter, if you remember, because of the pandemic. So the portfolio returned almost 14.5 cents in the second quarter. And as of June 30th, the pension fund was at $36.6 million. So it was a strong May and June with the help of the Fed. Unfortunately, fixed income vehicles, right, interest rates are way down close to zero, but at least the Fed has said that they do not support using negative policy rates in their toolkit at this time. So we're looking at the market building back and hopefully reestablishing the value that the pension had before. Eric had a very interesting presentation about a possible method of a funding path that we could take in the future that's different than what you would normally do. And I don't have the foils to show that to you. If you're interested, you can email me and I will send you the presentation. But instead of like a slow decline, because as you know, our pension fund is capped. There are no new people coming in since the last contract negotiation. So eventually, it should be time so that the money starts to run down as your last people are retiring and then passing away. So it's zero at the same time. That's not going to happen, but you do have a declining contribution, whereas in Eric's model, there would be a pretty much a level contribution until a certain year, like 20, 40 something, and then it would dive down to zero. So instead of a declination, it would be a level, and then then it would just go down straight. So I think the result is about the same contribution over time, but there was an advantage of doing it his way. And if Tom wants to kick in a comment, be my guest. That's all I really have to say about that presentation at this time.
Yeah,
Tom
great.
Hubbard, do you have any comments? Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, I think Tim summarized it really well, and we have that presentation. Some of it's similar to what you saw back in January, and happy to forward that along to you as well.
Okay. Any other committees, reports? All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Item 10, is there any other business? Yes.
Sorry.
You always have other business.
Well, this is really quick. If you drive north on Dorset Street and you hit the Trader Joe's intersection, or if you're traveling south, you may notice that it flows a little better now. And that's because Adam, while Justin was on vacation, went over to the traffic control box unit and discovered that there was a 40-second delay where there should have been a 15-second delay on the people traveling north in the left-hand lane that want to turn left into the U-Mall. So he shortened that from 40 to 15. So now there's no wasted time sitting there with an empty lane and nobody turning. Everybody's going, oh, twiddle my thumbs, waiting for the light to turn. Now it flows better. So thank you, Adam. Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it.
That's great. Okay. Well, if there's no other business, I guess I never can remember. Do we go into executive session first, or do we adjourn and then go in? We do it differently every time, and
You make go ahead and make the motion to go into executive session and then adjourn the session. And Tim, all you have to do is take what's right out of the agenda and to discuss negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options where premature disclosure put the city at a competitive disadvantage.
Yep.
And add Tom Hubbard, Paul Connor, and Kevin Dorn to the list to attend.
okay. Thank you. So Tim?
So I would make the motion that we enter an executive session to discuss negotiating or securing a real estate purchase or lease options where premature disclosure would put the city at a competitive disadvantage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye or put your thumbs up.
Before you vote,
Aye.
inviting in the three members.
No, we have a-
That's right. I'm sorry. Inviting in Paul Connor, Tom Hubbard, and Kevin Dorn.
Thank you. Okay. So with that amendment, all in favor signify, I see 5 thumbs, so that carries. And then do we have another?
No.
There isn't, no,
That's
okay.
it. You can
So the
adjourn.
next thing would be, and we'll have no report out of that or action from that executive session. So a motion for adjournment.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, so moved, seconded, all in favor?
I had to,
Aye.
do I have a new entry code that I had to let the
No.
dog out? So,
No.
no.
No,
Okay,
Dave, we're
fine.
gonna stay on this one. We'll just
Okay,
let
fine.
everybody else, the
Okay,
approval
got it. Fine,
leave the
sorry.
room.
I ran for 15 seconds, so.
Okay.